This is the Stop Playing Podcast with Sham and Shaka. I'm Sham.
I'm Shaka. What's going on, Sham?
Nothing much. It's a Saturday.
Yes, Saturday brunch day. We're very excited today.
And you know what, Shaka? For 2 years, you have been over-promising and under-delivering.
I want to caveat. I never said when. I said we will do this. That's all I said. Never said when.
So finally, folks, after 2 years of promises, we are joined by our first guest. Guys,
Yes.
It's true. We are joined by Reese Waters, host of Get Up DC on WSA 9, Overtime on 106.7 The Fan in DC, and former ESPN correspondent. And he's a comedian. What don't you do, Reese?
You know what? What kind of pressure is that you ain't had a guest in 2 years and you just gonna bring them? Clearly, if people been listening for 2 years with no guests, they ain't listening for no guests. So I'm just here disappointing whoever came here to rock with y'all.
We've been dropping breadcrumbs for 2 years. I've been over-promising. I said, so I stopped promising. I said, after the first episode too, I said, we will have a guest.
So guys, if you missed it, we are joined today by Reese Waters. We are so happy to have you as our first guest, Reese.
Absolutely.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. I've been seeing the podcast pop up on Instagram. And, I'm passive aggressive, so I ain't going to ask to be on the joint. I'm just going to sit there and side eye the post and be like, why they ain't ask me to do the podcast?
Yeah.
What's good with Rashad? Now I'm going back in me and Rashaka's history. Like, I ain't never put nothing in Rashaka's room. I ain't never hide nothing in his drink. Like, what's going on? I didn't get asked to be on the podcast. I didn't realize y'all never had any guests, so that makes me feel better.
See, now this is why our pre-production meetings got to go a little longer, because we were going to put up the illusion that we used our star power to get you on the show. Then you're going to come over here and start spitting my government and just do it all that.
That's funny.
Listen, yeah, we go back. Reese and I know his government, but I'm not going to put it on the show. See, that's the difference between me and you.
His government can be wikied.
It's just Sham and Shock. I didn't realize. Okay, I didn't realize. Okay,
see that extra syllable. That extra syllable makes all the difference, man. There are people looking for me.
Did you know what? But this is March on Washington week. If there's ever a week where having that name should help you in these streets, I'm telling you, find you something with a BLM t-shirt and you can end the night happy with that name.
I could be the king out here. I've said it many times on the podcast. I'll never be thrown out of the black organization just by name alone.
Absolutely.
I could also say that if my government was on here, but we're not.
Yes.
So Reese, here's something that you do not know. When you first came back to DC, you were on the Tony Kornheiser podcast. And I listened to that entire episode. And I love Tony Kornheiser. He's like one of my favorite people in the world. Absolutely. And he did an excellent interview with you. And you were talking about coming back to DC and doing Get Up. And you said that you went to St. Albans. So I went immediately to Shaka. What is it? Albans or Albans? Albans? Okay,
Albans
got
is
it. Fine. So I went immediately to Shaka. I was like, do you know this Reese Waters person? And when we have a podcast, we need to get him on. Yeah.
So
that's what's up.
So to
that
your
just
point,
shows you the power of podcasts, because so many people listen to that podcast. Like, so many people have come up to me and said, I heard you on Tony Kornheiser's podcast, to the point where I'm like, wow, everything else that I did was really that sad that the one podcast I did, like just as many people recognize me from that podcast from everything else I did up to that point. So I'm like, okay, it's good.
Well, I will admit I did know you from ESPN, but I didn't know at that point that you had a connection to Shaka. So
yeah, and he alluded to it before. I mean, not only did we go to that school, and I've talked about that school a little bit a few times in the podcast. So we both gone there. We both had our experiences, but we stayed in the dorm there. So in a lot of ways, you know, Reese and I and a few other people that we've talked about, like Reese, we talked about Brandon. We talked about power a lot on the show. Like we've had our breakdowns of it. We had a lot of good times and good experiences in our pre-production meeting. We went through some of those stories, but these guys, I mean, these are friends, these are brothers that we grew up with, and it was a, you know, interesting situation to go to that school with the racial dynamic. But I think out of that came a lot of good friendships, and this is one of them. So we're
hostages, like the five bloods, like we all just are tied together. You know, there's a unique bond that I feel like Black people have when they occupy these spaces, these majority white spaces, and they go through it together. But it's compounded because of the dorm, because we almost, you know, the dorm was like a fraternity as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely.
And so you had that to lean on as a resource for everything that you were experiencing on a regular basis. And it was such a spectrum of Blackness.
Yeah.
Where you had, I ain't gonna call nobody else out, but I'm gonna just say you had people like me that was way on the assimilated side, and then you had others. It was like the line. It was like a rainbow. You know what I mean? It was like a rainbow, and so just as much as we were all kind of had each other's back for the most part and were resources, we also had differences that highlighted themselves and how we process different things. You know what I mean? So it was, you know, and looking back on it, it was a really incredible, I don't want to call it an experiment, but it was like an incredible social dynamic that was created inadvertently by St. Albans. I don't think they did that intentionally, but
absolutely not.
Yeah.
I think you said it well. Like there was such a myriad and diversity of Black people, but there were so few of us. So it's one of those things like, how could you have so many differences? But it just shows that really is a microcosm of the country. And that we're a minority.
And
but
the Black community.
That's what I mean. It's a microcosm of the Black community within the country, that we are a minority and we're a small percentage of the overall population. But within that percentage, there's still, like you said, a rainbow, a big diversity. And to your point, it was like a trial by fire, man. We all came out of it with a special bond. But to your point, there were times in St. Albans where my biggest problems were with Black people.
Oh, 100%. Oh, well, you know who used to beat my ass. So as many issues as I had with the social dynamics and the racial dynamics, I had this big brother who was waiting for me in my room. So, you know, I feel you there.
Yeah.
But
how weird the world is. He was like a big brother. He was like a protector for me. It was like he chose who he wanted to bully and who he did. It was weird, actually.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting for me is a lot of the conversation that we're having right now amongst Black people is basically voicing some of the harm and the trauma that's created when you have, quote, diversity, but you don't have actual support. You know, it's like you say that you want to diversify this school or this company or this, you know, this block or this neighborhood, but you literally just throw Black people in there without any thought to how that's going to affect them, just being there without any sort of other thought or support given. And that's kind of what we experience. And it's good that we, you know, it took like 20 years, but it's, oh wait, am I dating us now again? We're going to have to cut something else out?
We've crossed that Rubicon. I've dated myself on it.
Are we pretending to be 22 right now?
Right. We graduated 5 years ago. Yeah.
It took a long time, but like, it's good to just actually be able to voice these things now, right? And just say what your experience is. And another thing too, I don't want to go on, you can cut me off at any point, but it's just like the more conversations like this that we have, the more I realize that I held inside and just assumed it as a fact of life. Like, this is just some bullshit I have to put up with just for being Black in America. And then you're like, oh, that's right. I shouldn't have to put up with this. I've just been eating this for forever, for so long that I forgot that it was even, I forgot that there was people that don't have to deal with this.
That's right. And when you don't have privilege and, you see people with privilege, it's a stark reminder, especially as you grow up, what you grow up without and the stuff you have to deal with. And I think so, kind of to your point, getting into some of the things we're talking about this week, it's been a very strange week, very heavy week. We're so happy to have you on the show, man, because we're going to be talking about a lot of kind of deep things. There's some funny things within it, some funny stories within it, and we're trying to make sure that we keep that balance. But I think a lot of the stuff we're talking about right now is going to kind of come out through some of the stories that we are talking about over the course of what's happened this week. And especially really what you're talking about is window dressing. And, we've had this big awakening with quote unquote in the country with George Floyd and everyone else in the protests. But a lot of it is window dressing in the sense of, America saying, okay, well, we realize our privilege. We realize we have this this overt system of racism. Well, do you really? To imitate Sham. Do you though? Do you realize though? And I think a lot of these stories, even some of the funny ones, I'm looking at one in entertainment that's like, it's just a stark reminder of like, you're trying to make a serious story and there's just racism pouring through it. And it's almost comical how ridiculous it is. One of those stories. But I think in all of these, a lot of these stories, even sports, as we're going to see, I mean, it's just like, everything you just said, that's all I'll say. And it'll pour out through the story. So if we're ready, man, we'll go through it. But it's some heavy stuff, right? Sham, you want to get started?
All right, so Shock, before we get into the stories, let me just go ahead and take a break for station identification.
Absolutely. Look at you.
She professional. Somebody we got to pay some bills.
Yeah, we got bills to pay.
All right, so for all you listeners, tell a friend. They can subscribe to us on pretty much every podcast platform there is, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. You can also hit us up on Facebook and IG at The Stop Playing Podcast. Tweet us on Twitter at Stop_playing_pod and visit us on our YouTube page. So, Shaka.
Yeah.
This week was a rough week, like you were saying.
Yes. I mean, look, there were a lot of big news stories this week, but what dominated the week was the shooting of Jacob Blake and the aftermath from that. So, honestly, it's hard for me to even lay it out because there's so many. You're a good layer outer with just the straight facts. Can we just get through the straight facts and then we can dive into it?
All right. So on or about August 23rd, the Kenosha police responded to a 911 call about a quote unquote domestic incident. It was basically like 6 or 7 women shouting at each other on the sidewalk. He pulled up, had his children in the car, I think 3 sons. Apparently he didn't say anything to the women, but he was attempting to de-escalate the fight from 2 other people who were there. Like it's really strange how this all worked out. But the officers arrived at the scene. They attempted to subdue him. They used tasers. And they said that the police yelled, "Drop the knife." But the person who took the video actually said that they didn't see any weapons in his hands. Right. So there was kind of a scuffle. Handguns were drawn by the officers. Then someone grabbed him and then he turned away, apparently to check on his son in the car. And then 7 shots were fired at his back and then he was hospitalized. And as of today, he's paralyzed. Yeah.
So, Reese, I'm assuming Sham, you've seen the video? Everyone on here seen the video?
I have not seen the video. I had chosen not to watch the video.
You've chosen not to watch it. Reese, have you seen it?
Oh, yeah. And, to Sham's point, I have had people tell me that it's traumatic and damaging for me to show videos like that because of re-victimizing the community and kind of normalizing that kind of violence. And you know what? I don't have I can't refute that stance if that's how you feel. At the same token, at what point do we get to the state where we allow this to happen and we don't blow it up like it's a big deal, right? Like, at what point do we just say, okay, this is something that we're just going to accept as a fact of life, and I'm not going to do a post about it, you know?
Right.
So yeah, I've seen a video. It is it's hard to watch. I mean, like a lot of these, it's really hard to watch. I mean, I thought Robert Ory, I don't know if you saw Robert Ory's emotional video where he basically said, I don't think white people realize how hard it is for Black people to see this kind of stuff happen. He laid it out pretty articulately, if that's a word. Did I just make up a word that included articulate? Oh, that is a word? Okay.
Yes, you were very articulate in laying it out.
Yeah, and I enjoy adverbs, so I applaud you.
She does. and she is the grammar police, so yeah, you would have gotten a message.
Well, the way that Robert Ory articulated it, his point and how he felt, I felt,
Here comes that message.
Yeah. Oh, well, by the way, Shane, one of my pet peeves is comfortability.
Oh,
it's
God.
comfort. It's comfort. Comfortability. No. Why are you adding syllables to that? The level, my level of comfortability has increased as I've been practicing with my teammates. Dog, you had the right
word. You had it. You had it right in the palm of your hands.
Anyway, so yeah, back to the issue at hand. Yeah. Yes, I have seen it. Yeah,
and to the point you were making about video, I agree that I respect anyone, even Sham saying it right now, anyone who chooses not to see that. I completely respect that, because you don't need to, Sham is smart enough to absorb the story without having to see it. I think that the power of video, we see it over and over, whether it's race or anything else. Ray Rice will still be playing football right now if we didn't see that video, even though that story had been known for months before that. The story in all the detail, the video changed nothing about the facts of the story, except you saw it. And with George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, you can say about Ahmaud Arbery, well, a Black man was jogging and two white men shot him with a shotgun. And that sounds terrible, but then when you see it, George Floyd, even worse. A police officer knelt on a Black man's neck for 8 minutes and he died. That sounds horrible, but when you see it, and when you see him crying out for his mother, you see it unfolding, and every second seems like a minute, then it drives the point home. And I think that's the power of video. And in this video, I mean, it's horrific. It's horrific what happened, Sam. So that prompted protests. And the protests have been ongoing, and we'll talk a little bit more as we weave through the show in general about sort of the after effects of the protests. I'm so glad we're not on video. I did something very stupid when I talked about weaving with my hands. But anyway, but in all seriousness, there were a lot of protests. There still are protests. This, as Sham said, this happened in Wisconsin, so in Kenosha and everywhere else. From that, then a second horrific story has come about. And Shem, if you can lay this one out as well.
So 2 days after the incidents during the Kenosha protests, there was a young man who decided, a 17-year-old man to be specific, young man to be specific, decided he was just going to show up to the protests with a firearm and just kind of go ham on folks. 2 protesters were killed. One was wounded very seriously. And the police saw this kid, basically gave him the what's up and let him be. And this is what the result has been from that.
Another reason I'm glad we had a video. Have either of you seen this one?
Yeah, I've seen this video of him running around. I had to be very I had to be very careful and slow to react to all the news about this gunman, Kyle Rittenhouse. His name is being reported as just because of my affiliation with the news. I'm like, okay, because I saw it well before, I was seeing it on social media, and this speaks to our culture right now, right? Where I'm seeing stuff on social media 12 hours before I'm seeing it on CNN, right? Or I'm seeing it on CBS News or NBC News, right? So I had to be slow to react to that or to comment on that. So I haven't said a whole lot about it, but, it's baffling to me that people, because of which side of the political spectrum you sit on, will find ways to legitimize why a Black person deserved whatever it is they got from the police. And to those people, the question I have, if you feel like it's okay for Jacob Blake, first of all, for you to even bring up the knife in regards to Jacob Blake, you're saying that he deserved to get shot 7 times back. It's either relevant or it's not. There's no two ways about that, okay? For you to bring up his past, his history, anything that he did, is saying he deserved to get shot 7 times in the back. Either it's relevant or it's not.
That's right.
Okay? And beyond that, if you feel like Jacob Blake, because of a knife in his general vicinity or, deserved to be shot 7 times in the back, what did you feel like this kid running around with an assault rifle deserved for crossing state lines and running around the streets of Kenosha, Wisconsin? And what do you feel like all those people deserve? Because what I see in reaction to so many of these videos is, well, talking about a threat and talking about, access to weapons and guns. Well, what do you feel like all these people waving them around, law enforcement who are white, deserve, if that's the case? If it's just about that, if it's just about the weapons.
Right. Look, can't say it better myself. The thing I was going to add to Sham laying out the story and then that reaction is that we saw some reactions from major media personalities, Tucker Carlson and Coulter, who was celebrating this young man. They got in trouble. Well,
don't forget Brian Urlacher.
Oh man, Urlacher, stepped out there this week, and I was late to this. I feel like out of the three of us, I probably was the last person to see, because I saw it like this morning. What Urlacher said. He going to compare. He's going to say to the players who were protesting, which we'll get to, well, Brett Favre's father died, and he played football Monday night against my Raiders, by the way. I saw that game and completely torched us. So he's comparing that to Black players and Black people's reaction to Jacob Blake, and then also celebrating Kyle Rittenhouse, to your point.
The Bears quickly were like, yeah, we don't know him.
Yeah. Yeah, Brian who? Brian who? Yeah. Yikes. But then you know what? Dick has also been tripping. So the Bears can't really. The Bears can't. They have some house cleaning they need to do for a couple of their people. But
absolutely.
But yeah, so those stories. I mean, obviously the trial and everything with Rittenhouse that's going to unfold. This is just beginning, but we've seen a lot of hypocrisy. And it took lives being taken for us to have to see it again. Tucker Carlson's not going to get fired. I mean, he does what he wants. He makes $10 million a year. That's reported, even though sponsors have left him. And Coulter, she's still fine. She'll do whatever she wants to do. So people get to say stuff like this with basically impunity.
Interestingly, the two people that Kyle Rittenhouse killed were white.
Mm-hmm.
White men.
Yeah.
Right.
And the third person he injured was also white. And he was charged. I think you did basically say that. But yeah, he's been celebrated as a hero and a vigilante. So it's
ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
Well, let's not ignore the fact that the RNC was happening this week. And all throughout this, as this story was unfolding, you heard speaker after speaker condemn, quote, the unrest and the violence in the streets. Mm-hmm. At the same time, not attaching the idea of social justice or police violence or police brutality to the reason that the people were in the streets, not commenting on armed police response to protests. And let's be honest, not all these protests were nonviolent. Not all these protests were peaceful. There was some looting going on. I can see that, but they also weren't all that either. It wasn't just people looting in the streets. It wasn't just people out here causing mayhem. There are outside agitators. There were a lot of these protests that were straight up peaceful and got met with an armed fist coming from law enforcement, which creates a conflict. And now you get to point the finger and say, oh, look at the conflict, look at the unrest, when you created that due to your response to what was a peaceful protest. So it's wild. It's just really wild now to me that this issue, which I call a human rights issue, has just been politicized to the point that it has been. Because this shouldn't be a political issue where you feel one way or the other, because you vote this way or that way, you can't respect you can't respect police respecting the humanity in Black people. Like that should be a given just as American citizens. And it's just crazy to me that it's been allowed to be politicized to the point that it has been. And it clearly is not stopping anytime soon, because we saw with the RNC what their MO is going to be until November.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And we were about to get into the RNC, so I'm glad you brought it up. Real quick, I'm glad you brought up the protest being met, a peaceful protest being met with police violence. Reese, I'm sure you're here and you covered it. We saw that right here in DC from 45 himself on right outside the White House at Lafayette Square, where there was a peaceful protest and he used that for the photo op. And basically, they said it wasn't pepper spray or what have you, but it was. And he basically bombed those protesters, and then they were having helicopters loaded to the crowd. And to your point, that's human rights. Everybody was marching at that. Black people, white people, whomever, right here in our own black backyard. And if it can happen here, it can happen anywhere.
And I think, Shock, that's the point. That's the point that I feel like people ignore is people feel some sense of safety and security because it's not happening to them. What you think is going to happen when they decide that they want to oppress another group, or they need this land, or they need to take over this company, or they need to, they need to build this pipeline. They need to do, what you think is going to happen? Like, that's why you respect the rights of every group, because if this group can be disrespected and disenfranchised, there's nothing stopping them from doing it to you. And that's what I feel like people just don't understand when they see things like this happen to other people.
You know what? Stop listening to our show, man. You talking about you talking what the Stop Playing podcast been talking for the last couple of years. You biting our stuff.
He sounds like a regular.
Yeah. No, it's only two people, man.
You out here sounding like Soulja Boy. Like, he took my whole flow, bar for bar.
Drake.
Look, Sham, like, I don't need you no more. Talking to me. She messaged you on the side, like, what's the schedule like after get up? Yeah, we can work that. We can work around that. Funny. But let's talk about this clown show.
Well, you know what? Let me say this too, because Shock, look, we opened up talking about St. Albans and how we process things differently. And you were one of the people who were talking about things like this then. I was not. Most of us were not. Right? Oh. You were one of the people that really opened my eyes to a lot of things that were going on in the world. So I applaud you for that. I don't know. I mean, you should know that.
I didn't know it to that extent.
Wow.
I don't think I was prepared for this. Thank you very much for saying that.
Look at all that praise.
That's awesome. I mean, what you're really telling Sham is I ran my mouth like this since high school.
He did.
She's not surprised. She's not surprised at that.
He did, just like this.
I'm like Wilbon, never surprised.
But I humbly accept that, man. I appreciate that. That's great to hear. But yes, I mean, look, we've all been engaged, man. We've all been engaged. Yeah, definitely. And we've been making reference to this clown show this week. So let's get into it real quick, because it was indeed a clown show all week. Sham, did you watch the RNC?
I watched for one specific purpose, and that was to see if Melania was going to plagiarize Michelle.
Right.
She didn't. So
she did
there's
not.
That. Just disappointed
For once.
I thought she was going to say she was watching for Herschel Walker. I'm disappointed.
Okay, full disclosure, I watched for Herschel Walker that night. Like, I only tuned in for that, and I was not disappointed.
No.
Actually, Shaka sent me a message, was like, do you hear this? Do you hear this fool Herschel Walker on TV? So I almost forgot about the Republican National Convention.
No, I believe my exact words were confession alert. And Shan was like, why do you have to make a confession? And I said, I am watching this specifically to see Herschel Walker today. So Reese, I'm telling you, we were on the same page. I watched for Herschel Walker.
Herschel Walker out here talking about their friendship from the 80s. Like, yeah, we used to go see Anita Baker. Right, back in the day.
They took family trips to Disney World.
Yeah.
I mean, it looked like the worst infomercial in the world. I was expecting them to break out a set of knives and try to sell them.
That's funny.
I mean, it was ridiculous. It was horrible.
They're like, so because he likes one black person in the history of his life, that means he's not racist?
I love that argument. He was like, I'm personally offended that he's been called racist. And it's like, well, okay. But he also prohibited black people from living on his properties. So are you offended by that or what? That's thing number half on the million of things that he's done. But it was a clown show this week. So the Republican National Convention was this week. And we spent a lot of time last week talking about the speakers at the Democratic Convention. Well, honestly, we're not going to spend that much time on the speakers on this one because it was just a poor production. Now, granted, there were times in which you could tell that they understood that they needed to get a good production out there and, just make sure there weren't a lot of technical issues or whatever. They had the advantage of learning from some of the things that, Sham, you talked about in the Democratic convention the previous week. They had to manage Zoom and all that. And obviously they had pre-recorded speeches, but for the most part, the one thing I'll talk about and then kind of open the space for you guys, the part where 45 came out there with the immigrants for the naturalization ceremony. I knew at the time they looked uncomfortable, and obviously they were on the spot. Yeah, it came out later. They were told about that maybe an hour before that, maybe even less time. So they knew that they were going to be naturalized. They knew that, the ceremony was coming up and they were prepared for that. What they did not know was that they were going to be used essentially as props for the campaign. That's why they looked uncomfortable in that moment. So that's the definition of using somebody as a prop.
Oh, that was that. Yeah.
It's ridiculous
because it was apparent that I didn't know if they were just nervous, if the moment was too big, or if they were in front of the president. But yeah, that's
why they did not know that would happen. They did not know they would meet. They might have been told they would meet the president, but they would not know. They did not know that it would be then shown, even if it was pre-recorded. They were told that immediately, basically before.
Wow,
which is ridiculous. That's crazy.
I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but. Dang, that's terrible.
Well, look, I mean, you saw them try and reach out to immigrants through shows like that. You saw them try to reach out to black people by having the Herschel Walkers and the Daniel Camerons and, all them people. But the reality is that, for most immigrants, for most black people, how you've acted in the last 4 years is going to supersede the faces that you show me for 5 minutes on the convention. So what that tells me is that actually wasn't for our benefit. That wasn't for their benefit. That was just to make people feel better who were thinking about leaving that party for the sake of November, to make them feel better that, oh, wait, he's not actually racist. Look at all these black faces. Oh, wait, he's not actually xenophobic. Look at this naturalization ceremony.
Right.
Because you have the benefit of ignoring that stuff. Actual immigrants and actual black people and actual women that have been paying attention to what he's been doing for the 4 years don't have that luxury.
That's right. And I'm glad you mentioned Daniel Cameron. Honestly, I was texting Sham this whole time, and anyone who would listen, that probably was watching him speak made my blood boil probably the most. Sir, it has now been approximately 6 months since the murder of Breonna Taylor, and you are coming out here speaking at the convention. Apparently, that's the speech is what you've been working on for the past 6 months, because I've seen no action. And then I went down a rabbit hole and looked up other conferences where he's addressed like why there haven't been charges and stuff like that. And it was just a bunch of fluff. Like, there's no reason why there have been no charges against the officers who murdered Breonna Taylor. And Daniel Cameron, by the way, for the listeners, is the Attorney General of Kentucky, who is black. So he can supersede Breonna Taylor's murder happened in or around Louisville. He could supersede that investigation if he wanted, and get some indictments to get some charges. And he hasn't. He didn't address it in the speech, which honestly, I was waiting for that. Even though I probably would have thrown my remote through the TV if he had addressed it in a way I didn't like, other than say, "Oh, by the way, we filed charges today." Which I knew I wasn't going to happen. But the point is, he didn't even address it. He was sitting there talking about, black people having their own mind and not voting for the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. And it's like, okay, well, can you have your own mind and do your job and actually prosecute somebody who murdered this young woman in basically her sleep 6 months ago under your watch, or what?
Yeah, it was just like it never happened.
Yeah.
He just glossed over that like nothing.
Like nothing. And I need to calm down. I have a microphone now. So
yeah,
you are.
Hey, he even brought up her name. If you recall, he brought up her name.
He brought up the name.
No irony of the fact that he has any ties to that case whatsoever. Right. He just brought up her name like it was just another person who was killed in America.
Exactly. And that's your jurisdiction. Like, what are you talking about? You're right. I forgot he brought up. Actually, I think that was the part that actually did make me want to throw my remote through the TV. So,
but you like your TV, so you couldn't do it.
I do. I threaten to do that every week, but then yet it never happens.
I can tell you my Daniel Cameron moment was the McCluskeys, who's the couple in St. Louis that went viral after holding guns on protesters. And what specifically angered me about that was what she said when she's talking about, well, first of all, you're highlighting people simply because they held guns at protesters. Okay. Mm-hmm. So when later that week you have vigilantes that caused the deaths of two people,
if not that
out
night,
in Kenosha, Wisconsin,
if not that night, maybe the next night. Yep.
But you have to own that. Like you have to claim that. You have to address that. People trying to apologize and say, "Oh, these were recorded in advance." They've been stoking this forever. And that's why you highlight people like that, because you have an insensitivity to what you might create. Okay. But what specifically angered me was what she said when she was talking about they could be coming for you. When she talked about she was talking to, essentially white folks in suburbs all over America, saying they could be coming for you. What are we supposed to do?
They weren't even coming for her.
As if those Sham, they had no idea who in the F she was. Right. They didn't know her. They didn't know her husband. They didn't know nothing about her. Like, what sense of arrogance do you think these people had any thought of you in their minds whatsoever? A. And B, the main thing that upset me, this idea of mobs and hordes of black people where have we seen that before? Where have we heard that idea of be afraid of these wild Negroes? We've heard that in post-slavery Reconstruction. That was used as one of the calling cards for vigilantism, which led to the rise of the KKK. That was used in creation of a lot of our drug laws. That's one of the reasons why marijuana was over prosecuted up until a couple years ago, beyond its actual danger, because the people who oppose marijuana, who, by the way, are basically like the tobacco and the alcohol lobby, who oppose marijuana for business purposes, tied it to these out of control blacks and these Negroes. Yeah. That's been a tried and true formula for America to scare white suburbia of these out of control hordes of Negroes. And my God, I didn't think I would see it in 2020.
Yeah, and to your point, like Birth of a Nation. Yeah, it was like propaganda for that, right?
Yeah, they didn't want that out.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. If you had to look up indifference in the dictionary, it would be the people who marched past that couple.
Yes.
On the lawn.
Well, they were marching toward the mayor's house.
Exactly.
The couple's house was just on the way.
They weren't even thinking about them. It's like take out the racial aspect. Why are y'all on your lawn, like pointing these guns out in the middle of nowhere? These people aren't even looking at you. No. Even with your guns, they don't even care about you. It's just like crazy. But yeah, and I didn't mean to almost interrupt you. If not that night, wasn't it the next night between that speech that you were referring to and Kyle Rittenhouse? It might have even been that night. Because to your point, you were saying later that week, but the timing of it, to strengthen your point, was like really, really close. If it was very close that night, it was the next night that it happened. Yeah. So
guys, Vernon Jones.
You go. Y'all go.
The only thing I have to say about Vernon Jones, Democratic Georgia State Rep, was that, so I'm on a group on Facebook that's like all HBCU alumni. And, he went to North Carolina Central. And when I tell you that group lit up, they were like, we don't claim him. We don't know him. Like, they were so upset. I mean, reasonably.
Sham, one of my mom's best friends went to North Carolina. And until you said it, I just remembered. My mom told me, she said, your aunt, and I'm not going to name her because she'll be mad, but she said, your aunt wrote a letter upon hearing the speech, sent an email to the Alumni Association or whoever and said, I don't want him involved in anything. He's a disgrace. And blah, blah. Like that night, went to the computer and wrote a letter. Yes, to your point, they were up in arms. They were up in arms. Oh, it was crazy.
They want him removed from the school record books.
Yes. That's like, I mean, that speech was terrible.
He was a mess.
It was horrible.
Tim Scott, the only thing I feel about him is I wish that he wasn't on that side.
I mean, look, he has his points in order. I've seen him on Sunday shows and stuff. Reese, I watched the hell out of like Meet the Press and all that stuff, man. So like when I've seen Tim Scott, and I hate that. To your point, I agree with Shan. He needs to come back to the good side.
I mean, am I allowed to say it? He seems pretty solid, and it just sucks that he's on the wrong team.
He's on the wrong team. Yeah. But
that's good. No, that's solid. I took my cap to y'all for giving him for respecting his points while disagreeing with them at the same time. That's good.
Mm-hmm. When Tim Scott's talking, it's like I disagree with you, but you at least sound like you know what you're talking about, and you don't sound like a clown. I disagree with you.
Yeah,
like
he didn't sound like
wholeheartedly disagree with everything you're saying, but you at least sound like you put some thought into it, and somebody didn't just rewind behind your shirt. What else? A screw or something, and just have you recite talking points for 45 of the Republican Party, like as these other people that we've referred to sounded. So who else was there? Trump's kids. Oh my God! Did y'all see the meme please tell me y'all saw it where they saw Don Jr. say he was coke. Man, Sham, you sent it to me.
Oh yeah, he did look coked out. He looked horrible. The whole time he's talking, I'm looking at his eyes and like all like the rosiness around his cheeks, and I'm like, what's going on here?
Reese, did y'all see, and Sham, did y'all see the speech? I don't know, I forget her name, but she used to date Gavin Newsom, or they used to be married.
Kimberly Guilfoyle.
Kim Guilfoyle. I posted on our page that, or actually on my page, that she reminded me of Homeboy from the first of the new Star Wars movies. The general, when he comes out and makes that speech and he's screaming all over the place. The new Star Wars movie, General Hux, where he's sitting there screaming and nobody said anything. And it's just like, yo, why are you screaming?
I want to know why she said her mom was an immigrant from Puerto Rico. I just want to know that.
Oh yeah.
Somebody need to give her a social studies lesson.
She just seemed like the drunkest lady on the bachelorette party bus.
Right.
She was there to turn up.
She was really there to turn up. She was unhappy
up
in her home life. She was like, I got 4 days in New Orleans. It's going down.
Yeah. So she's Don Jr.'s girl.
Mm-hmm.
But she was Gavin Newsom's wife. That's why she went out of her way to talk about how bad California was.
That's what I had to think. What are you thinking if you at home and you Gavin Newsom right now? I'm like, God damn.
Yeah.
Look, we all have exes, all right? We all have skeletons. They don't always pop up at the RNC yelling and screaming.
Or
like
TV.
Show
up at your new job and try to like make you look bad.
Come on now.
Yeah.
Come on now.
It's like, I got to get out of her DMs.
Yeah. I'm sure he was like, I dodged that bullet.
Yeah.
So question, what exactly is a Democratic city?
Yeah, apparently any city that a Democrat is the mayor or leader of. As opposed to, a freely elected city in our country. Yeah.
Yeah. Rudy Giuliani had a lot of smoke for Democratic cities.
And it's like, dude, Rudy Giuliani, I question, first of all, his mental capacity right now, because he sounds crazy like for the last few years. But then also, it's like, dude, you're so corrupt and you made your bones off dealing with corruption, but you act just like these mob bosses you used to pursue. Like you act just like
I just think it's wild to listen to New Yorkers whenever Rudy Giuliani pops up, because that's their account. And I actually was there. I lived in New York during a lot of Rudy Giuliani's reign. So I have a personal kind of like my butt clenches like just a tiny bit whenever he pops up, because I realize that we have to hold this L. But I'm like, my goodness, man. I mean, talk about not being able to go home again. Talk about not being able to go back to the block. Like that dude that dude would get captured the second he even entered LaGuardia or JFK airspace.
Yo, I'm glad you mentioned that. Obviously, we talked about how far we go back. When I visited New York for college, I stayed with Reese. He hosted me. And I did not cover myself in glory that weekend. I remember that.
None of us did. That was like, oh, wow, you want to come see Columbia? Let me get kicked out real quick. Let me not be here and create a space for you.
Yeah. And honestly, it was because of that trip. He hosted me and I had a good time. I narrowed it down between Columbia and where I ended up going, Vandy. It was really, really close. So, but great time. But
man, you could have been there with me and Brandon. And John. We could have had a good old time.
Yeah, we've been kicking it, definitely. But with the RNC, clown show. Just complete clown show. And then finally, Shem, you referred to this last week. 45 is dodging sort of the Hatch Act in terms of having events, political events for on I guess, government property, so to speak, because he's having events at the White House and he's having speeches at the White House. And then his speech came on Thursday night. And not only first of all, he went an hour and 10 minutes talking about nothing.
You see all them flags he had?
Yeah.
You see, it was the second longest acceptance speech to his acceptance speech in 2016.
Right, the second to his own.
Yeah.
Right. So he owns the top two. And then afterward, a fireworks show.
That was the one positive thing that happened. In the whole 4 or 5 days, that was the one positive thing, because the hours I keep with Get Up DC, I don't never get no good fireworks show at 11:30 at night. So everybody's sitting here mad, talking about they can't sleep. I'm like, good. That's how I act when y'all loud all during the afternoon, while me and all the elderly people trying to take naps.
Look, you turned over with a smile on your face, huh?
There we go. Great. I'm like, good. I get a show on my timeline.
That's great. That's great. No, but yeah, he did that, and it's one of those things. People are openly questioning whether it's legal or not, but it's like, if you have to openly question whether something is legal, then it's not.
Well, it's definitely one of those laws that's kind of pushed in the back. I mean, it is a law, like you can't do it. Like Mike Pence did it the night before.
Exactly.
And one thing that they were discussing on MSNBC after it was kind of like, well, Trump and Pence, are pretty much protected. They're not going to go after them. But if, the Senate committee or the House of Representatives, whoever wants to go after them, they're going to have to go after the cabinet members.
Right.
So, I mean, what does he care? He's like, hey, y'all ain't gonna do nothing to me for it.
Again, go ahead.
So he's just gonna do what he has to do. Like, he's been breaking laws for the last 3 years. So what's one more?
That's what I was about to say. You can't indict a sitting president. So what you have to do is go through impeachment, and we've been through that exercise. Mm-hmm. So no need to do it again.
It is what it is. I read the transcript of the hour and however many minutes. I mean, the only thing that stood out is that he still doesn't know what he's doing, and he tells a lot of lies, and here we are.
To my shame, I watched it.
Yeah, I couldn't.
Because I wanted to see if he was going to say something wild. Reese, I don't know. Did you catch a lot of it?
That was the one speech that I actually didn't watch because we were preparing for March on Washington coverage on Friday. Mm-hmm. But I did catch all of the fact checkers. I did catch all the people breaking it down. So make sure y'all check out Daniel Dale's video with Anderson Cooper if you haven't seen that. Just rattling off the top of his head. But it was indicative of what we saw for the last, for the 4 or 5 days and really for the last couple of years. I mean, him creating this reality where we're not going to feel safe in Joe Biden's America, but meanwhile, a lot of people don't feel safe right now, where he disavows any of the effects of what's going on with the economy. Is not his fault. We're behind the coronavirus already. Let's forget about all those lives that have been lost. And he's not responsible for unrest in the cities. That's the Democrats' fault. He's solely responsible for all of the gains of veterans, despite the fact that Barack Obama passed that. He's done the most for Black people, despite all that LBJ did. I mean, he creates his own reality. And I will say this, based on what I've seen on social media and a lot of the viewers of Fox News, that has been successful for him.
Absolutely. The video itself, that propaganda video, if you just landed on Earth, like right before that video started, you would believe it. Yeah. It was very well done. It was very well done. It was full of lies, but it was very well done.
And it really seems to be, I mean, I saw this a long time or this is like maybe a year ago. I saw people were posting that one of his strategies is outrunning your ability to catch him in these lies. So he always has something else going on to occupy your time while he moves on to the next thing. Hatch Act is a perfect example of that, right? Like that's not something that's going to be adjudicated between now and November. So who cares if he does it or not? That's how that's how he plays it.
That's a great point. Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, is that all the political news we got for tape?
Thank God. Yes, it is.
So be it.
Right. So you guys are ready to get on to some entertainment. And I said
Absolutely.
that with a little bit of smile in my voice. But then, we have to start off with the sudden passing of Chadwick Boseman. And I say it's sudden because none of us really knew that he was suffering from a colon cancer battle.
Right. Yeah. And, here we are. So, today, the 29th, Saturday, this came out late last night.
Mm-hmm.
And the part that I feel the worst about out of all this is that there have been sort of images of him circulating that had talked about his weight loss. And whenever you see that with celebrities, a lot of times people try to make light of that. Like, oh, what are they doing? But because no one knew, now it brings the point home that he battled with this for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And when you see him in movies like The Five Bloods and Reese was talking about that earlier, and we were talking, and Sham, I think we had talked. Well, we definitely talked about it on the show. That's a really good movie. Even in that, obviously you can see that he's not looking like T'Challa in that. He did a incredible job of managing, trying to battle this illness while doing these very difficult projects. Mm-hmm. Extremely difficult projects. And then I'll cede the floor to you guys. The only thing I'll say, he's from my mom's hometown of Anderson, South Carolina. He went to the school, his school was called T.L. Hanna, and my mother went to West Side. So those were basically the two schools. And back when she was growing up, basically was segregated. Like, so all the white people went to Hanna. But by the time he grew up, he went to Hanna. But those are the two big schools in that city. So he's a hometown. She knows his family. They know his family. And he always stayed close to his roots. And his family, just like him, awesome person. And lived a great life. But yeah, I'm devastated by this.
Black Panther was your favorite MCU movie?
No question. Not only my favorite MCU movie, but in my top 10 of movies at this point. Reese, I got a quiz for you. How many times I go see Black Panther?
Throw
out a ridiculous number. Close, 6. I want to say 6 times in the theater.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm just glad that movie was good because I was fully prepared to lie.
Yeah,
I was fully prepared to lie. We only get 3 black movies a year, so I'm prepared to lie. I ain't going to. Yeah, Big Mama's House 3 was good. Y'all slept on Big Mama House 3. This Halloween, that taught me a lot about life. I ain't gonna lie.
Boo 2, that was good.
Yeah, not only lie, but then promote it. Make sure we get some run out here.
Don't get me started on Juwanna Mann. No, like I think that Chadwick Boseman, maybe this is a defense mechanism. It probably is a defense mechanism, but whenever there's a passing like this, the way I kind of process it is almost like they were sent here to do a specific job and specific work, and then they were called home.
Yeah, that makes sense.
For him to give us, along with Ryan Coogler, but in order for him to give us Black Panther and the level of pride that emerged as a result of that, that'll exist for kids to come, but really came at a time when we really needed it, when we really were in an interesting place as a group a couple of years ago, is immeasurable. And just as you mentioned, Shock, like him working and continuing to put out projects that push forward positive Black images, and different and interesting, not just positive, but different and interesting Black images, things that we hadn't seen before on screen. And then the other thing too is just the grace and dignity that he always seemed to have on a personal level. And, I tweeted out that, he carried the grace of Thurgood Marshall and Jackie Robinson and T'Challa and even James Brown. Like he carried that in life at a time when we really needed somebody like him to do that. And so I'm grateful to him for all of those things. And I know these 4 years couldn't have been easy. Like I know these last 4 years had to have been rough. And so again, this might be my defense mechanism, but I'm kind of like, you know what, you rest. Like you rest. Like you did an unbelievable job for the culture and for your people.
I mean, you want to talk about putting in work for the culture.
Yeah, I mean, and filming and going back and forth in between like treatments and chemo and all that stuff. That's just like insane to me.
Yeah.
Especially when people talk about like how much it takes out of them just to go to or post chemo treatment. Like people go days like feeling sick, and he just like soldiered through all of that. That's insane.
Yeah, and obviously they've been showing a lot of things he did and was doing today. They showed his commencement speech at Howard because he went to Howard, and
I mean, his only fault in life.
I knew she was going to say something. See, you know what, Reese? Nah, it's great that
he
she
was
did.
99% perfect individual.
The other ain't you, right? The other ain't you.
No, the one.
Oh, okay. But she or he at that speech, they showed part of it where he was saying, going to an HBCU in general, so opening it up to that, going to an HBCU gave him the foundation in which to play those characters. And the other thing, and Reese, you kind of alluded to it, and I'm glad you put it the way you put it. I saw someone on TV talking about him, and they were talking about playing James Brown. He did it in such a way that if the wrong person plays James Brown, it turns into a caricature. If the wrong person does it. And he made sure that it was not done that way so that you could understand the significance of James Brown without turning into a caricature. And that's a testament to how much he cared about making sure that image was represented properly. As he did with everything. You could playing Thurgood Marshall seriously, like Thurgood Marshall, I mean, you say the name and you want to like go open a book and read, you know what I'm saying? All of that. James Brown was an entertainer. He was a very good entertainer, but there've been a lot of character. Well, right, obviously. But the point being, he was so big and so huge, and I guess his career lasted so long that, like Michael Jackson and a lot of other people, there were a lot of caricatures made of him, and it's hard to then try to portray a serious biopic of that person. And he was able to do it. And I think that that's a testament to his craft and his devotion to it and his devotion to the culture. And it's awesome.
So what are your thoughts about Black Panther 2 now?
I mean, it was well, first of all, they were filming it, so who knows how much of it they already had in the can. So
you think this may be like a Paul Walker treatment?
Depending, yeah. Reese, I mean, what's your thoughts on the sequel?
I haven't heard anything about how much they had completed. I know it's going to be, I think you brought up Paul Walker sham, and there may be a moment somewhere like that where, they have a reason for the Black Panther to be, because remember, the Black Panther, that's a transitionary power, right?
Yeah. So anybody could be in the suit.
Yeah.
Right. So that's something. So, if they wanted to maybe transition to Zuri, no, I see a face.
No.
That's I was looking at Tiger Woods shooting 72 and double bogey. I'm sorry.
Okay. I thought you okay. I
No,
thought I was like,
I'm for the Sashiri idea. Yes.
Maybe I should have turned off the camera that moment.
I was like, oh dang,
Yeah,
really?
yeah,
Okay.
she don't like that idea.
In favor of that. She reacted to me like I reacted when they passed Captain America off to a regular dude. What's my man's name?
No, don't do that to Anthony Mackie.
The Falcon?
Oh, come on, man. Anthony Mackie gonna get
books.
The first time they send Anthony Mackie in, he gonna get beat up.
Okay.
How you gonna be Captain America and you a regular dude? Look, if Captain America came to me and he was like, yo, you my mans, I want to go back in time and be with old girl. Can you take on the Captain America suit? I'd be like, hell no, man. You know they gonna piece me up. What you thinking?
You know what?
They gonna leave me in a gutter somewhere?
No, he's right though. He's right. Because Steve Rogers was not regular.
He was not regular. All right. I will say this.
Drink the juice.
First of all, that was hilarious. That's facts. I have to stay consistent. On this very podcast, we still talk for Anthony Mackie. Anthony Mackie's for the culture. And he referenced passing him Captain America. He said Marvel didn't do enough. That's not enough. They need more black people involved in the MCU.
And they just lost him.
Did you see that?
Well, you know why? Because he need a gang to back him up when he get beat up next time he fight a villain. That's why.
Yeah, he ain't got Tony Stark to help him.
No.
Anthony Mackie, cool, man. Don't do that to Anthony Mackie.
I can see Anthony Mackie acting like Chris Tucker in the First Friday. Like, they flying out here. Hell no.
All right, look. All right, let's wrap up this Chaz Boseman. I can't even talk now. Look,
rest in power to
Chadwick Boseman.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he would want us to smile. Maybe Chadwick would be like, "Hey, man, I tried to help him." That's great. That's great. Continue the smiles on the show. So, hopefully, Sham is a genius for capturing a screenshot. That's all I'm gonna say. Sham, you deserve to reap the rewards of laying out the story. So please do.
So normally we will put this in the sports section because as an athlete, Usain Bolt, the fastest man alive, which I still question, tested positive for coronavirus. And so NBC News posts an article, and they're talking about it, and we're like, whoa, that's not Usain Bolt. That's actually Kevin Hart. So they posted an article about Usain Bolt, but had Kevin Hart's photo on the article.
I mean, Sham, when we advertised that Reese was on the show today, please make sure you don't post a photo of John Wall.
No, I was going to post a photo of Martin Lawrence.
Oh, I thought you were gonna go Mark Curry. Normally, I get Mark Curry.
Well, see, I was going for. But the point
is that people don't look alike. So
yeah,
right.
yeah. I was going for the sports comedy, parallel of black people who did not look alike at all. Yeah, so that's where I was going. But either way, I mean, it's unacceptable. This is from NBC.
Yeah.
A major news network. Listen, Reese, you don't have to pull the curtain back so much. All I need you to pull the curtain back a little bit is when a story comes out about someone, what is the process of actually getting that stock photo to make sure that we have the right person?
Well, one thing, so we did see this with with Elijah Cummings and John Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
I forget who did that, but there was that. Yep. And then we saw it with was it Aretha?
Yeah, it was.
And they posted somebody else.
They posted Patti LaBelle instead of Aretha.
And they look nothing alike.
When people are sick, right? Like John Lewis is a good example. Like when people are sick and you feel like you might have to go into coverage, covering their life and eulogizing them. They prepare that well in advance. Mm-hmm. So, as celebrities and dignitaries get old, and especially if they start going in and out of the hospital, normally they have all that stuff like ready to go. Right. which makes the John Lewis one all the more unforgivable because that shouldn't have been like a last minute thing. Like they just should have just pressed post on a lot of that stuff. So surely this one is a little bit different because this hit everybody out of left field. I remember, Shock, you texted me. You know what? I'm talking about Chadwick Boseman. My bad.
Yeah, you talking about Chadwick. Yeah.
So obviously, this story with Usain Bolt was not anything that anybody was expecting, right? So, so this was something that they probably had to scramble and do last minute. And because it's not a story of somebody dying, I can see it maybe going through without people actually checking. But not only do they not look alike, their names ain't similar. They're not from similar walks of life. Like, I don't know how the Kevin Hart picture even
different nationalities.
How would that have even been? Yeah, I mean, like at least put Bob Marley up there or something.
So Reese, one of the things that Sham always likes to say when we talk about like crazy stories, especially that pertain to like Black people, was there, Sham, I'll let you say it. Was there a who in the room?
Oh, Jamal, the intern.
Yeah. Was there a Black person anywhere like within 100 feet that y'all could run this by and be like, hey, is this, we're looking up Usain Bolt. It's like, yo, that's Kevin Hart. Like, what are y'all doing?
I don't even understand how a white person would have let that through.
Thank you.
I don't understand
white
how
people love Kevin Hart.
They know who Kevin Hart is.
Yeah.
They love him.
Yeah. They know who Kevin Hart is. But at minimum, I mean, a Black person at least would be like, yo, y'all can't run this. This is Kevin Hart. For the white person in the room who hasn't heard of him, but y'all cannot go put this out there as a Usain Bolt story. That's incredibly offensive. Y'all know that, right?
I'm just glad they didn't try and save it, talking about, we heard Kevin Hart was at the party. They took the L as they should have.
That would have been horrible.
But not before Sham on some Doc Holliday style got that screenshot real quick.
Yeah, because I clicked on the link and they had updated. I said, oh, heck no. Y'all not going to mess this up.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy. But yeah, that's the story I was referring to when we talk about like humor and, window dressing. Like, I wouldn't call it like racism, like, okay,
what do you mean? All Black
being
people
able to get a job,
apparently.
Right? It's just casual, like privilege. Like, come on, guys. The other one I could think of, Michael Clark Duncan and Michael Clark Duncan and Ving Rhames. So when Michael Clark Duncan died,
yeah, I remember that. They
were putting photos of Ving Rhames like all over the place. It was not just one place.
Yeah, I remember that.
I remember that. So it happens. It happens too often, unfortunately. But a funny story, going back to the politics real quick. Melania Trump went up on stage, made her little speech, whatever. And then some Republican commentators thought it would be a good idea to say, okay, well, we need more women like Melania Trump and less women like Cardi B, referring to WAP. What they didn't understand is that Cardi B, in the tradition of people like Rihanna, don't come for her on social media, period. Don't
come for her off social media.
Don't come for a period. 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 You're right. But like, you don't want the smoke. And she brought it. She came back with it. Shan, what'd she do?
She basically said, oh yeah, like our first lady, and posted the picture of our first lady with the nipple covers.
Yeah. Like she looked like she got that WAP.
Yeah. She said she looked like she giving real WAP
spectacular.
Signals. Yeah.
Spectacular. Reese, please tell me you saw this.
I did. I think she said, didn't she used to sell that WAP?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think she said, didn't she used to sell that WAP? Referring to her, our first lady's past life. Which, by the way, I forget about that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they want you to do.
Yeah, you 100% right. You're 100% right. I totally forget about that. And look, I feel like this is like, they brought up Cardi B, but the person who really needs to be brought up in this conversation is Michelle Obama, right?
Correct.
Because Michelle Obama is everything that they say that they're asking for. And look how they talk about Michelle Obama. And look how they dealt with Michelle Obama. Look how they received Michelle Obama. When she spoke at the DNC, Big Mike was trending, right?
Yeah, they call her
so they're out here calling all sorts of dudes and whatnot. So we know what that's about. Okay, this doesn't have nothing to do with culture. All this got anything to do with is color.
It's absurd. Yeah, but Sham sent me that story, though. I'm so glad Cardi clapped back. Again, if you do not want to smoke with people like this. Because she went and grabbed the receipts immediately.
And said she's fucking with some wet ass pussy vibes.
Well, you know what? Because some of these people have never been embarrassed by a black or brown woman in public. Like, if you've been shouted out and embarrassed by a black or brown woman in public, you wouldn't go at them like this on social media for all the world to see. Okay, this is the good thing about growing up a nerd. Okay, because I have been embarrassed thoroughly by women of all different nationalities, but it's something like being carried by a black or brown woman publicly that you never set yourself up for that to happen again. This never would have been me.
Hey Reese, I wish I could transport you in time to and she's gonna hate that I keep bringing this up. Stop Playing Podcast family. If y'all had seen Sham July the 4th, how long ago was that, Sham?
Gosh, that was 20.
That was not the year we did the podcast. So I guess 3 years ago. It was the year before.
It was 2017. Yes.
Okay. 3 years ago. Oh, look, she getting mad that I'm even interrupting.
I'm mad because I'm trying to tell you what the year is, but you keep trying to guess it.
I said 3 years ago. That's 3 years ago. Reese, we'll get into the story after the show. All I know is this. Some people made some assumptions and damaged some of Sham's property at this party, and they wish they hadn't.
Yeah. You don't want that. You don't want that smoke. Definitely not.
I don't remember the last time I saw that many white people with their mouths open at the same time. But yeah. So Reese, I'll tell you that story and take you back in time to when we had a Kirk out from Sham. I'm usually the Kirk out artist on this podcast. This
is a little bit off topic, but Taylor Swift popped up in my feed because of something that she did, and I owe her a huge apology.
I've been hearing a lot of that lately. Yeah.
Wait, right here?
She been getting woke. Yeah, go ahead.
You know what? Why not? Right here on the Stop Playing podcast. Look, all them takes that I had coming for her, defending Kanye. I mean, I've never been more wrong. Think about it. We are in 2020 and Taylor Swift is out here stumping for the culture. All these receipts are popping out, proving her to be more and more right. Not only that, she sat on them and didn't release them herself. Other people are letting them loose. Then Kim tries to defend Kanye by trying to come for Taylor and makes him look even worse. I'm like, wow.
Okay, so I know Sham probably knows what you're talking about. I do not.
No, remember the whole thing? Okay, the whole thing about that track where he went at Taylor Swift. You remember that?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Yeah. When Kim recorded the conversation and didn't.
Kim recorded the conversation, and then it comes out that she only released a snippet of the conversation, but then when the whole conversation came out, she was proven to be wrong. I'm like, wow. So now this is basically a Masai Ujiri situation, right? So I'm like, not only are you wrong, but you going to double down on the lie and make it even worse by trying to release receipts that have been doctored. Like, wow. Right. And now we sit here in like a critical point in our future, and Taylor Swift is out here hitting these streets in support of Black lives. Meanwhile, Kanye is trying to get on the ballot in all these Midwestern states. I'm like, I've never been more wrong about a situation than that one.
I hear that.
I don't even say the man's name on this show. I call him Kim Kardashian's husband. I've never been a big fan of this gentleman. Part of the reason for that is what he did to Taylor Swift initially at the MTV Music Video Awards when he went up there and did that. That kind of put like the nail in it for me. I was like, this is just ridiculous. So when that happened, you know, I'm a big fan of Keeping Up with the Kardashians. And when they, like Reese said, doctored the recording, they aired that on the show where Kim's like, oh, Taylor said this, but I got proof. And she went all in 100% on that. And now I'm listening and I'm just like, man, okay, you know, I'm Team Kim. So this kind of puts
and I've been bringing all kinds of smoke for Mr. West lately. And I've been saying his name only in the sense of bringing smoke for him. Him getting on the ballot is a joke. And, you know, music and all that aside, that's fine, whatever.
I think his music is all that. He all right.
Oh, he done fell off. Yeah, I don't have time for him.
He always been just all right to me.
This is my question, though, right? Like, what are the ramifications? Because there's so many, there's so much slander, rightfully so, that he attracts when these stunts pop up, right? But then you see the same people that are trying to bring smoke for him popping up with him in the studio and these little photos on social media. When he did the little church thing, remember he did the church thing in Atlanta? And T.I. was there. Mm-hmm. We did Sunday service and T.I. was there. Mm-hmm. And I think there was a couple of other people there that are supposedly, woke and trying to push the culture forward. So, and when he does release music, like when he released that Sideways gospel album, it was all people all talking about, oh, you know what? It's, I'm listening to this, that, and the other thing. When you released the thing with Nas, talking about Nas. I'm like, oh, okay, so y'all out here still listening to his music, still patronizing all his little stunts and whatnot, still posting little photos and whatnot. I'm like, okay, so it seems like there's no actual ramifications for all the stuff that he does.
Like, you're correct.
He's, quote, canceled, but the cancellation never goes through.
He's made more money since he's canceled, quote unquote, than ever before. When he released that horrible shoe, that shoe made ridiculous money. Everybody on social media panned that shoe, and then it made like it is what propelled him. And Sham, I remember you saying when he was arguing with Forbes over whether he was a billionaire or not.
Mm-hmm. Showed him receipts, and they had to change the status. And
it was based on that horrible shoe. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of it, like his profit.
Yeah, something like 800 million came from that show.
Yeah. And it was like, people gonna call it horrible, and then everybody went out and bought it. Not just the celebrities that you're talking about, Reese, but like regular people. Oh, yeah, he's Bama. Yeah, whatever. But you're gonna go buy stuff. So
yeah, it's wild, man.
Yeah, it is wild. Let's get into what we want to all talk about.
Wait, but before that, I got one question for you guys.
What's that?
Monica or Brandy, Monday night. Who you got?
Reese, you go first.
Look. I want to be team Monica. Okay. Historically, I've been team Monica. I try and go for the underdog. I feel like Monica's more talented than Brandy. I feel like she didn't have the career that she should have had. However, I'm not going to oppose Percy Miller. If Master P wants to sit down and softly come for Monica's neck in a way that I haven't seen since Ghostface Killer undressed Action Bronson, okay, to R&B.
Dang.
Look, if Percy Miller wants to sit down and undress Monica, who am I to oppose Percy Miller? Not to mention the fact that if Brandy wants to call for reinforcement, she got Ray J just sitting on the sidelines, and his petty knows no bounds. He's the one who dropped I Hit First. Okay. Right. Now, I Hit First that's the kind of mental ideology that I have held and adopted for most of my life. Okay. Most of my adult life has been that immature and that petty. And if you have somebody on the sidelines who's willing to resort to such things, I cannot oppose that squad. I'm Team Brandy.
He came for Fabulous on live radio. So.
He did. Yo, he did. So by the way, Sham, one of my favorite pieces of audio of all time. I literally listen to that rant every couple of months.
That rant is spectacular.
Yeah.
That rant is spectacular. Yes.
And put the Breakfast Club on the map. They still thank him.
You're right. That's right. That's like their bellwether moment.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. That preceded like put some respect on my name and all that. Like all of those are the children of that rant. Yes.
That was the one.
Yeah.
So Team Brandy, you're not going against Percy Miller. Shaka?
I'm not going against Percy Miller or Ray J.
Now, yeah, to your point, I'm so glad you call him Percy Miller. Like, I remember, anyway, going to school in the South, and I knew a girl from New Orleans, and she was like, look, all this Master P stuff, whatever, everybody in this city know who Percy Miller is. Master P is a gangster. Was a gangster. There he's a businessman, but I respect him tremendously. Clearly, we know why he got the smoke for Monica. Free C murder, right?
Yeah.
But look, you actually said Monica is more talented than Brandy, which I'm very curious how my co-host feels about that. But we'll go there.
You know what? Let me rephrase that.
Okay.
She's a better singer.
I was about to say, okay, you rephrased that and dug a 10-foot deeper hole and threw yourself in it for my co-hostess. For my co-hostess, at least.
Look, Brandy is multi-talented. She can do lots of other stuff. So I don't know that Monica can do that. I ain't heard Brandy hit them notes that Monica be hitting. Oh no.
I can't wait. You know what?
I'll say
I'm gonna keep my comments short and sweet because I can't. She's bursting right now, so I'm gonna just say this. I'm Team Monica, but that's because that's who I probably want to date more so than Brandy. So but I'll enjoy it. Now you go ahead.
And you wonder why I call you names like I do.
I know. I'm a visual person. That's it. Go ahead. I gave all the smoke. You have all the smoke for this. Go.
I mean, look, it's no smoke. I mean, you can go back to a few episodes where I was singing Brandy songs. Yes. So you already know I'm Team B Rocker. But we not gonna sit here and act like she can't blow. What's we not gonna do? We not gonna like disrespect her like that. One of my friends who is a fabulous musician, and I agree with him wholeheartedly. He posted the other day that Brandy is like the vocal Bible because she is. Brandy is a vocal virtuoso. You will not sit here and act like Monica is gonna sing Brandy under no table because she's not. She's not. She does not have the vocal dexterity that Brandy has. She does not have the range that Brandy has. Yes, Monica is a fabulous singer. She's a fabulous church singer. She can get gully with them. She can get under there. But no, she don't have the vocal skill. She doesn't. The dexterity ain't there.
Reese, you missed the part of the pre-production meeting where you couldn't come for singers like that.
I ain't come for Brandy. I ain't say Brandy was trash. I ain't say she was going to get mollywopped. I ain't say none of that. I think that, they are both good singers, okay? Neither one of them is Britney Spears out here, okay? This ain't going to be... did it again. Yeah, ain't nobody breathing heavily through the vocals to try and get to the C. No, nobody's doing that. They both are talented. I'm just saying, when I listen to them sing, it sounds like Monica has this... I don't. I told you I ride with Percy. I'm in Percy backseat. Come on. I would do an ICDC commercial right now if it would help Percy and Lil Romeo. I'm just saying.
That's a point of contention for Romeo right now.
Nice. Real quick before we get off in entertainment. I know Reese Waters just came on just like lightning. Before we get off in entertainment, Joe Biden just posted about Chadwick Boseman. He said the true power of Chadwick Boseman was bigger than anything we saw on screen. From the Black Panther to Jackie Robinson, he inspired generations and showed them they can be anything they want, even superheroes. Jill and I are praying for his loved ones at this difficult time.
Beautiful.
That's how big Chad is, man. I mean, bigger than the president. Wakanda forever. If Wakanda was a country, I'll move there right now.
Team B Rocker. All right, y'all ready for some sports? Always ready for some sports. So real quick, no, Sham, right? Earlier? Yeah, real quick. This happened this morning. Clifford Robinson, God, he passed away this morning at the age of 53. He played a long time in the NBA, 18, 19 years.
I didn't realize his career was that long.
Well, you know what? Most of it was in Portland, and then he kind of moved around towards the end, so you probably forgot he was even in the NBA. But yeah, he passed away this morning.
I also didn't realize how big he was in the cannabis
Yeah, he was big in the game. He had like this. He was building distilleries, or he was
he like
heavily
was,
or owned some, and was a heavily supporter of it.
Definitely was a big investor in companies and spoke at like conferences. So he was kind of on the forefront of making it legal in the States. But weird note. But Reese, I mean, had you knew about it when we talked about it earlier, but I didn't know he was at sick. He had a couple health issues. He had a tumor removed a couple years ago, and he had a couple other health issues. I did not know. Oh, he had a stroke like right before that. So he had been battling some issues.
I didn't know about any of that.
Me neither.
I didn't know about any of that. And I also didn't really know what he was up to in his post-playing career, but it is good to see. It's always good to see when players are able to, finesse the finances and the platform and turn it into something positive, not only for themselves, but for their community and their loved ones. So, hey, my hat is off to him, and thoughts and prayers to his family, because he's definitely somebody. He's a guy who I remember very vividly from my childhood.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely.
Absolutely.
And I'm about to say something that may not be popular, but I feel like he was kind of like, because at 6'11", he used to like just pop outside. He was kind of like what, Dirk Nowitzki became, and like Kevin Durant. Like, obviously they're more athletic and more skilled, but he was that on a small scale.
Precursor.
Exactly. Way before people like that.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, you quantified it, like the idea of somebody doing that. Mm-hmm. He was one of the first people who do that.
That was in the early 90s too, because you weren't supposed to be out there shooting 3-pointers at 6'11".
Exactly. I mean, Reese, when I see Cliff Robinson, I think of games like NBA Jam and NBA Live, and we used to play in the dorm.
I remember that.
Yeah, and he'd be one of those people you take out to the 3-point line to shoot because you figured out the code to the game, and then you frustrate. Yeah, and then you frustrate other people that we know, and play for a little bit of money. Yeah, like how you able to make that 3 with Sean Kemp? Don't worry about that, but pay me my 20. I figured out it's ABCA. Now shut up and pay me my 20. But rest in power to him. With the cannabis thing, he talked a lot about actually playing and smoking it, which of course a lot of players can speak to now. So he was on the forefront of not just making it like a thing of, oh, well, I just want to smoke weed and that's it. He really wanted to legitimize it and show that it was a way to deal with especially like joint pain and muscle pain and stuff like that. So he was on the forefront of that. So rest in power to him.
Rest in power, Uncle Cliffy.
Absolutely. Okay, well, I don't know. Good name.
That was his nickname.
Oh, was it?
Yes.
Oh, okay. You
think I should be making this stuff up?
Well, I thought you made that up. I was like, all right, that was nice. Now, big story though, the biggest story in sports. We talked about the shooting of Jacob Blake earlier. So the protests. So we would have had playoff games to be talking about today, but that came to a screeching halt in the middle of the week. Right, Sham? So what we know about the story up to this point?
I think it was after the Wednesday night. No, it was after the Tuesday night games. And the first player I remember even like having some smoke for the issue was George Hill. And he kind of went off about the fact that they're sitting there playing playoff games and this stuff is happening in Wisconsin. So the next day, I believe it was the Milwaukee Bucks that were like, they were flirting with the idea. It wasn't like set in stone, but they were the first team to kind of have some murmurs about boycotting the playoffs.
And George Hill's with them. So
right.
Yeah.
So as the day went on, you started to see that teams were like, yeah, no, we're not playing either. And so they basically boycotted the playoffs. And then the NHL followed, I want to say. Actually, maybe baseball followed, MLB followed, and then NHL. And then pretty much 2 days went by. So they had this meeting about what the players wanted in return for getting back on the court. And from what I read, and I'm not going to say I know everything that was talked about at that meeting, that now they're going to be polling places in all of the empty NBA stadiums. So that's what I know about the protests.
Mm-hmm. So Reese, what are your thoughts on this?
I thought it was handled. I mean, it seemed like it was impromptu by the Milwaukee Bucks. I know a lot of the rest of the league was upset that there wasn't more conversation that was had, that this was what they planned to do, because it put a lot of pressure on them. Mm-hmm. But that's sometimes how these things get done, right? Sometimes these things get done first off of emotion, and then you figure out how to process it on the back end. But I think that the league handled it in general. The league handled it well, because they sat out and they made their point. They got a lot of people's minds and attentions on what happened in Wisconsin, and how that's something that's not going to be business as usual when we see things like that. Yeah. But then the question of like whether or not to go back or not, I've gone back and forth on that. But I think what happened with Doc Rivers, if you saw Doc Rivers' comments where he talked about, we continue to love this country and this country doesn't love us back. If you haven't got a chance to check out Doc Rivers' pregame comments, make sure you do that. That's the kind of moment. Statement.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's the kind of moment that probably doesn't happen if people were just at home, posting on Instagram, right? And TikTok, right? I think that the platform allows for something like that to get out and go viral in the way that it did. And so in that way, I think A, they were right to step away, and B, they're right to go back and to continue to elevate the platform and use that platform to comment on everything that's going on.
Yeah. Now, agree with everything you said. I will accentuate the first part, which is that my immediate reaction, I'll be totally frank with the Stop Playing Podcast family, and especially you being here and saying it like that. I was immediately like, okay, this seems, because I had seen George Hill with the smoke before that. And I was like, okay, I get it. I get the sentiment, and I'm not going to begrudge the players for feeling that, especially in their community. But don't make a move. You said it. You're making a move out of emotion. If you make a move out of emotion, that's fine. But I need the plan beyond that to be forthcoming, and I need it to be forthcoming soon. That's my thought. Now, a lot of people disagreed with me. My friends and I argued about it, because I was like, look, I don't care in terms of like, oh, I'm a fan, I want to watch the NBA. No, I don't care about that. If honestly, like, I respect them for, if they don't want to play again and close the playoffs down and all that, that's fine. I'm not going to sit here and say that. But if you're going to make a move that says, okay, we are not going to play. All right, cool. I need the list, well, not list, but I need the tangible asks to be forthcoming as soon as possible, so that it's not just an empty sort of like, okay, well, we're not going to play because we're angry. Well, I get that. All Black people are angry, or at least should be, about what's happening. But if you want, when people say, I want change, well, that's an easy statement to make. It's an easy statement to say you want change. It's also an easy statement to say, I don't want Black people to continue to be killed or shot by the police. Well, first of all, hate to break it to anybody who doesn't think that, no matter what we do, that's still going to happen and always going to happen. Unfortunately, it is. Now, I'm not saying it's right. I'm being real about the country we live in and the situation we are in. It is racist. So, barring a stoppage of that, which is not going to stop, I need a tangible list or actionable items whenever you do something. People called it a boycott. Anytime I hear boycott, the biggest successful idea of a boycott is Montgomery bus boycott. There was a tangible ask there. even within a racist society that they knew would be racist after that. The tangible ask was you cannot have black people like regulated to the back of the bus. And until that happens, we will not take the bus. Once you stop doing that, we will go back on the bus again. If we have to cripple your system, and people were willing to walk 10 miles to work and do all this and that because there was a tangible goal at the end. Even if that goal was not the elimination of racism, period, there was an ask. And that's what I wanted from the players. They came out with a statement later that night. I was okay with it, but I was like, okay, I want something else, because it's like, okay, you're not going to play ball. Then when are you going to play ball again? What has to happen for that to happen? Now they are resuming as of today, as in actually probably a couple hours. So we'll see.
3:30.
Yeah, exactly. So less than an hour, but we'll see how that is. But that was my initial reaction. Like, I'm happy they did it. I'm happy they used that platform. I just want to make sure that when they do that, you mentioned it, some amount of emotion, that's fine. I just need that plan, that train to be moving towards a plan like right away. There has to be so much urgency for that. Otherwise, it falls flat and it's a cry wolf thing like next time if something happens, because something will happen. That's my point. Something else will happen. And it lessens the power of what you do if you don't do something with purpose every time you do it. So that's my thought on it. Hope I said it right.
I like that. I agree with that. And one thing I did too want to mention is we saw the WNBA join the NBA, but we also saw Major League Baseball and Major League Soccer stand in solidarity with the NBA. You saw Naomi Osaka stand out and say that she wasn't going to play, and and tennis stood by her. I ain't gonna lie, she kind of bad, but I ain't gonna go too far.
Yeah, she's too young.
Anyway. Let's circle on
back to the subject. Yeah.
But her game was on yesterday. I was like, all right, come back. All right. Yeah. So
and anyway, now she's out of the tournament with an injury.
Yeah. Is she really?
Yeah. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. Well, I won't be watching anymore. So wow. One of the cool things. Okay, one of the things that used to upset me, right? Is for the last couple of years, you hear the Colin Kaepernicks and you hear the Malcolm Jenkins and you hear, the LeBron James and the George Hills talking about, or Torrey Hunter in baseball, right? You hear black people talking about civil rights and human rights, but you never hear white athletes talking about it, right? You never hear white athletes asked about it. And you never hear white athletes feel compelled to weigh in on it. And that's something which used to drive me crazy, because I'm like, imagine if they just never bothered to ask men about gender equity, right? Or gender rights, because why should they care, right? Why should they ever say anything about it? I'm like, how are you absolved from having any sort of stance or emotions about what's going on that's affecting the people that are in your locker room to such a degree, or the people that are in your community to such a degree? So it's like, I'm relieved to see that is lessening to the point where you're seeing other leagues that aren't predominantly black stand in solidarity with leagues that are black. You're seeing white teammates stand in solidarity with their black teammates. That's something that really should have happened a long time ago. And so I'm happy that we finally made some progress in that regard.
And to your point, because they weren't asked, you get the good side, which is what you just said. And then you get some of the ones who, because they weren't asked, you didn't get their real thoughts, right? So
yeah. You get the Brian Urlachers.
You get the Urlachers.
But to counter that, you get the Chris Longs. And so... that to me is a loss for my team, because I felt like, and you even said it too, because we talked about Chris Long a bit the year after the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles had won. Yeah,
she's a Birds fan. And you've seen Reese's stuff with the Redskins, right? Or excuse me, the Washington football team.
Yeah, I probably
WFC. WFC.
I'm pretty sure I just scroll past it.
But you know what? That's I don't begrudge that because I went on a rant at the beginning of last season that made a lot of people mad on the fan. And I was like, wait, why am I a Redskins fan? Right? Because my mom happened to settle in a certain geographic area. I'm like, if I look at my team and how they've handled everything, Dan Snyder has let his allegiances be known. He was one of the last owners to rebuke the president for calling the players SOBs for kneeling for the anthem. He's been one of the most restrictive in that regard. Obviously, we have to deal with allegations of racism as a result of the name. And then I'm supposed to hate this team, the Philadelphia Eagles, who went so hard at the president's neck that they refused to go to the White House, and the white teammates backed them on that, as opposed to it being something that was divisive, came out to Meek Mill in the Super Bowl. Like, I'm like, this is the team that I'm supposed to hate just because we happen to settle here, but I'm supposed to ride for these dudes that are sitting here acting in every capacity against the culture that I'm trying to push forward. How is that?
That's right.
It's interesting that you bring that up because, Shaq, I don't know if we talked about this before, but when I used to be a Washington football fan, and I realized we haven't talked about this. I realized very early, and I want to say like 11, 12 years old, that I could not be a fan of that team anymore because of the treatment of Doug Williams. That was when I said, you know what? I like the Philadelphia Eagles because Randall Cunningham is amazing. And I have been an Eagles fan since 1992 because of that. So to your point of being in an area and liking the team just because you're in this area, I learned that very early that team was not going to be my team.
And 30 years later, they mistreated Doug Williams again, and he allowed it on Bad Week for Brothers, which is still, it's an unfortunate episode, but it's one of my favorite episodes, episode 17, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Bad Week for Brothers. Reese, if you ever want to hear me kirk out, you listen to that one.
Or he could just call you. I'm just kidding.
Or he could just call me. That's very funny. You should go on a comedy with him. Yeah, you guys have been awesome.
All right, circling back to the NBA before we wrap up, though. So at 3:30, the Magic are playing the Bucks. I think the Bucks are up 3-1 now, so they're probably gonna take that. Thunder and Rockets after that at 6:30. So that had become a series that I've enjoyed. But I think that's likely because Russell Westbrook hasn't played in the last two games, and Russell Westbrook kind of got the benefit of this boycott because he's playing tonight.
He's had time to recover. Yeah.
So I don't know if that will obviously it will impact it, but I'm thinking it's definitely going to shift the other way towards the Rockets having the upper hand. But I've been enjoying this series more so than any of the others. I
mean, look, the off the court stuff has superseded, but man, we were having spectacular playoffs up to this point. Luka Doncic, I mean,
he's balling.
Just superstar. Reese, what's been your thoughts on like the on the court before the playoffs?
My thoughts are the Clippers are the feds. I mean, you want to tell me Paul George going to take shots at Dame? Paul George on his third team, okay? Going to take shots.
His name is Playoff P. Get it right.
Oh yeah, my bad. My bad. So Pandemic P going to take shots.
Nice.
Which, by the way, I love that they made that trend. By the way, and I didn't know this backstory about Paul George and Doc Rivers' daughter and Seth Curry.
I didn't know that either.
Supposedly, okay. Now this is me reading off Twitter. Okay, so if y'all come to evidently this is supposedly true. So Paul George was engaged to Doc Rivers' daughter. He cheated on her with a stripper.
Yes, that I knew. I didn't know who he was engaged to.
I did know he was seeing his daughter, but I didn't know they were engaged. Okay.
They were engaged, evidently. Paul George cheated with a stripper who he later wifed.
See,
and so Doc Rivers is now either engaged or married to Seth Curry. And by the way, Doc Rivers has to now coach Paul George against Seth Curry.
Wow. Now, here are the caveats I heard to that story. If I understood, I remember Paul George being with somebody and then cheating on that person with a stripper and then having to pay her $1 million to get rid of a baby, to abort a baby.
Wait, so which one? The stripper or the ex?
The stripper. The stripper got pregnant.
Oh, that I don't know. That part I don't know.
That's one Paul George story I heard. That was the second Paul George story I heard when he was when he got with Roy Hibbert's fiance and basically like torpedoed the Pacers back when they used to be battling with the Heat.
No.
And Roy Hibbert, you didn't know this? Or
yes. Well, that was when Paul George took Danny Granger's job and became the star of the team, and then he took Roy Hibbert's woman.
Reese. I don't know if you clearly remember because I know you're in the sports like this. When Roy Hibbert just like was out here scoring 0 points and 2 points.
Yes, I remember that.
And people were trying to figure out what was wrong with him. And then the backstory was that Paul George had taken his girl.
Wow.
Yes. So we're breaking news to you on the Stop Playing podcast. And by news, I mean like gossip.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. But we talked about that on here before.
It's understood. Yeah.
Paul George, a whole thought out here.
Yo, Paul, again, now I have said this about Paul George, and I stand by it, especially based on the story you just told today. Paul George is one of those people, anything I hear about him, I believe until proven otherwise, because apparently, like, you can't put anything past him.
Evidently not. He is like a relationship Mike Tyson. You just believe. So anyway, I'm like, okay, so Paul George coming for Dame, right? Dame is out here playing with teammates that ain't never made no All-Star teams, out here with a hurt finger. His number one Robin got a freaking injured back, got a bone broken in his back. But he's like, nah, I'm going to stay. I'm going to win for Portland, right? So Paul George going to come for Dame. Meanwhile, he don't even have to play Dame. Right? He going to gas Dame up and get Dame to go ham. Meanwhile, he know he don't have to suffer the consequences because they got to play the Lakers, right? Mm-hmm. Then they go and play the Mavericks. They lay an egg. They get saved by the fact that they erroneously throw out Kristaps Porzingis, who, by the way, I don't know what the world's going on with his back. His back must be Paul George because they never I never seen him at the same place at the same time. But I'm like, how is it that the refs are out here bailing out the Clippers? I'm like, do they think we like the Clippers or something? Do they think we ride for the Clippers? Like, the Clippers don't got no fans. The only interest in the Clippers is a Clippers-Lakers series. That is it, and that's all, okay? Yeah. Yes, I want to see that series, but I'm telling you right now, if the Clippers win that series, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. Yeah. I'm done.
So let me ask you this on top of that. If the Clippers win that series, where does Kawhi... Where do you see Kawhi? So in addition to everything you said, I think the other interest is Kawhi in general. I think people are now starting to throw him in the conversations. So where does he land? If he somehow is able to beat the Lakers and then get a chip. What if Kawhi gets a chip? Where does he land for you?
Honestly, I can't get past last year because I still think they would have lost that series if Klay Thompson would have stayed healthy. Forget KD. If Klay would have stayed healthy, I think they lose that series. If KD stays healthy, they definitely lose that series. They might get swept. So, look, what happened. I'm gonna give him his props, but let's not act like Kawhi and the Toronto Raptors, like plucky little underdogs, rose up and slayed the Golden State Warriors. Like, Golden State had to fall down to their level, and they still barely won. So I'm going to say that. Second, he went to a team. How many games the Clippers win last year? Didn't the Clippers win 50 games last year?
You talking about before he got there?
Yeah, before they get the Clippers were good last year.
Yeah, they were good. Because they had,
So how much props should I give him for going to the Clippers and taking Paul George to join a team that was good when he got, like, how many props should I give him for that?
Strong take from our guest. Sham, response?
Take.
Yeah.
Take.
Yeah. Look at you.
Hey, I mean,
Hey, I give him a lot of props.
Yeah,
I give him a lot of props.
I give him way more than Reese does.
Yeah. I think we diverged on that one, my friend. I give Kawhi a lot of props. Now, I will agree with you on maybe not to the extent to which you're saying it, but clearly it would have been a different series with Clay. Different, even in the outcome. I would agree with that. I don't think it's to a point where you're saying, okay, well, they had to come down at a level. I think Kawhi did do a little bit of dragon slaying. Kawhi is capable of dragon slaying.
All right, so just for clarity, the Clippers won 48 games last year.
Right.
And then added Paul George and Kawhi.
Yeah. Now, Paul George, I mean, we talked about all his foibles off the court. He's inconsistent. So there was a period, even last year, when he was with Oklahoma City, where he was a legit MVP candidate. And Paul George, in general, is a very, very good player, but he can also be very inconsistent, which has actually proven out in the playoffs.
Well, he also he can't have any level of consistency because he needs to stay on the court. Like, he's always got these random injuries that keep him on.
Yeah. And I feel like Kawhi is, he's stable, he's consistent. Sham actually brought up something.
He's taking games off.
Well, I mean, load management. Reese, what's your thought on load management? I know we're about to wrap up. What's your thought on load management?
I mean, honestly, the schedule's too long. The reason why there's load management is because they demand that they play 82 games, which is way more games than we have interest to see. That's why most people start watching around Christmas. Okay. Mm-hmm. But they don't want to give any money back, which is why they don't shorten the season. If they shorten the season to, 60 games.
Yeah, 65.
Somewhere in that range. And where it's a sprint where every game matters. A, you can't load manage because every game has that much more impact. And B, there's less reason to because you could spread the games out more. So if they weren't so greedy, they wouldn't give some money back. You wouldn't have that issue. So I don't feel bad for the owners that players load manage because you're the one that's collecting all them checks for them 82 games.
Now, what do you think about the players who choose to load manage, though? I mean, the other players in the past were able to step up and play them 82, though.
Yeah, and they deserve props for that. I mean, I understand that, Michael Jordan and his whole take about, it might be the only time seeing me. I'm going to play 82 games. LeBron plays a ton of games. Including playoffs and all that. But, I mean, Jordan, Magic, Gary, I mean, all those guys in the 90s, 80s, 90s. They absolutely get credit for that. But you also have to take into consideration they had a different financial reality than these players do, right? So they weren't as set and as secure as these players are. And second, they see like now players are reacting to how we process them historically. So you see how the fact that we always harp on the chip, how many chips did you win? Well, now everybody plays for that. So you see player movement affected by that. And you see when they decide to play and not play affected by that.
That's a good point. I will say this, though. Reese, Commissioner Waters is a player's commissioner, ain't he, Shane? Looking out for him.
Man, that load management is some BS.
Yeah, I ain't with it.
Hey, but this is what I'm saying.
Go out and play 82. I'm with you on that. I've been on the season too long. Not about the players. Everything he said. There's no sense of urgency. You get it. I'll put it this way: between like Christmas and the All-Star game, the NBA is unwatchable because those games nobody cares about. Between game like 30 and like 50, nobody cares about that.
Look, man, the NBA done been playing 82 games my entire life, and the only thing that's different is that they done added 2 stupid games to the first round of the playoffs.
Actually, I like that. Best
out of 5, get it over with. And they only did it in 2002, 2003, because they thought the Wizards were going to make the playoffs and they didn't. They was trying to get.
I don't like how she talking about us.
Sham out here sounding like an 80-year-old farmer. Why don't they segregate it again? Right. We didn't have niggers in my day. Get them off.
Now these millennials got problems.
They got a bus they got a bus to the same school.
People out here with all these injuries, breaking legs and whatnot, man. Wasn't nobody doing that in the 80s and 90s.
We didn't have no 3-point shot. If you could make a shot outside the lane, you got all the props that you needed.
I mean, Sham, get off my lawn. Good gracious.
Tony Kornheiser.
I'm telling you, all people's issues with the NBA in terms of the load management, in terms of the intensity, right? In terms of the stakes, all that would be fixed if you shorten the season.
I agree with that. Shorten the season.
Shorten that first round back to 5 games. How about that?
No, I'm not with that.
Best of 5.
But man, it's been a pleasure.
It's been fun.
Yeah, this has been awesome.
It's been good to get down with y'all.
Hey, listen, when Sham hits you up to join the show and kick me off, just hit me first so that we can double back and talk to her, okay?
Well, there's going to be a certain level of consistency. I mean, I'm probably going to talk less than either one of you. So there's that.
Wow. See how she threw a shot? I mean, this is our first guest, Sham.
She did.
Yeah. I mean, we need to have guests wanting to come back. This guest will then tell other guests how he was treated.
Just treated with nothing but love.
Y'all didn't have nothing in the green room. I ain't getting no snacks. Ain't no amazing room here. Ain't no amazing fruit. Nothing.
I mean, we can't even see you. How we gonna feed you? Like, what are you talking about? you still in the garage.
I was able to do it with no shirt on, so that's good.
Hey guys, we're on Zoom. Let's get all that straight for everybody out there. Nah, man, we appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Reese, for joining us. It's been a long time coming.
Fun. Thank you guys for having me, and love to do it anytime. You guys are doing a great job, so keep it up, man. We need podcasts like y'all's.
Thank you.
All right, so that wraps up this edition of the Stop Playing Podcast with Sham and Shaka. Thanks again to our guest, Reese Waters. Again, you can reach us or find us on any platform available. You can reach out to us on Facebook and Instagram at the Stop Playing Podcast and on Twitter at stop_playing_pod. If you got any questions or comments you want to directly send to us, you can send them to info@stopplayingpodcast.com. And like I always say, keep your chips on the plate. No double dipping unless it's the podcast. And we'll talk to you real soon.
Later, guys.
Stop playing.